Andres Ayesta. I'm a registered dietitian, nutrition coach, and I am the founder of a company called Viva Nutrition, which essentially what it does is it helps people how to optimize their life, their performance, their body composition using nutrition as the main foundation. And I love to teach. I love to teach people. Courtney knows, and I have a few of my one-on-one coaching clients here today. So they all know that one of my biggest things is that if you understand the why of you're doing certain things, you're always going to understand a little bit better how to fuel your body, how to eat the right things for the right purposes. If you came to my previous workshop, you know that I'm super practical, and I want to make sure that I'm just not sitting in here and telling you what to do and here's how to do it, but to also ask questions. So literally I have something prepared, which is like the whole meal prep thing, but a lot of times I end up doing these presentations and these workshops and we end up going on a complete different route because you guys have so many questions and I want to make sure I answer them. In the previous session or the previous one that I did, we talked a lot about macros. And typically a lot of CrossFitters or people that come into CrossFit, they hear two things, macros and paleo. So I want to make sure that I also answer a lot of questions as far as that and that I clear everything. Like literally my goal here today, my objective is that by the time that you guys are done with this session, we'll do 40, 50 minutes, whatever may be the case, every answer that you may have regarding nutrition is completely answered. That's really my goal. Now I put in here, if in case you miss anything and you still want to ask me questions, how you can find us on Instagram. This is my personal page. We have a company page and also we have a Spanish page if you're a Spanish speaker. We're actually launching our programs down in South America very soon, so we're super excited. And if you're on TikTok, which is my new thing, and you want to see me actually dance and do really funny stuff, teaching nutrition, you can actually follow me on TikTok as well. So anyways, let's get started, shall we? The first thing I want to make sure that I establish a clear distinction of what a registered dietitian is and what a nutritionist is or a nutrition coach is and what the differences are. I went to school for about 4 years. Chandler here is also a registered dietitian, so she understands the grit and everything that it takes for us to become dietitians. She actually works with the Yankees here in Tampa. I'm super excited to have her here. But essentially, a registered dietitian completes a 4-year degree. Then after that, completes 1,200 hours of supervised practice. And after that, we have to sit for our board's examination exam. So we have a lot of things that we have to do. So I've been studying nutrition for about 15 years now. So, and I don't say that to brag, but just to tell you, it's really easy to go and find somebody that teaches about nutrition, that just got a certification, and then don't always, and I'm not saying that they're bad at what they do, but then they don't always understand really deep inside what kind of goes into our human body and how to adjust and personalize nutrition. So I just wanted to start off with that and kind of give you guys some perspective. Now, we're going to talk about meal prep, but I'm going to start asking questions. What are some the typical questions and what would you want me to answer for you here today? Start to think about this, and we're going to write these questions down on the board, and then we're going to get started. Who wants to go first? What's a question that you may have that is lingering around? We got Matt. All right. Love that. What else?
What to eat after your workout?
Okay. Post-workout nutrition. What else?
Is fasting good?
Fasting. I love that question. What else?
Body types.
Body types. You mean body types and nutrition according to body types?
Yeah.
Love that. Anybody else?
Macros for weight gain.
Macros for weight gain. Love that. Anything else?
Can you burn fat and gain muscle?
Can you burn fat? That was
Can I get stronger and leaner at the same time?
burn fat and gain muscle. Awesome. All right. I think that's a pretty good because literally I can spend an entire hour talking about each individual one of those options. So we're going to try to break it down. So we're obviously going to start portion control, but obviously you guys came here also to talk about meal prep. So I'm going to start off by telling you how we turn this week specifically, which is a perfect example, how we turn one tray of chicken into 6 different types of meals. So this is where we're actually going to talk about the practicality of meal prepping and how you typically tend to see people, what do you think about meal prep? When I say the word meal prep, what is the first thing? Extensive work, right? Who's actually done that? You take the individual containers and you lay them out on the table and you put the rice and all portioned out and then you take a picture of it for the gram. How many of you guys have done it in the past? A few of you guys, right? How long did that last? 3 months, like 2 months. We did it. In fact, we got to a point we started doing it for other people. We had this idea that and we didn't understand how much work it took. But one thing we realized about meal prepping, and I always like tell a lot of my clients, like, you know, people don't plan to fail, they just simply fail to plan. And a lot of times they overcomplicate this whole thing with nutrition, and they try to go and take like the super hard route when it comes down to just simplicity. So for example, like I always tell my clients, like, do not start doing like the preps and everything, because it's just simply something that you're not going to be able to sustain. So I'm going to give you an example. We're going to talk about utensils and things like that you need to have in your kitchen to make sure that it's easier for you. Because regardless of whether you're working at home, because that's a whole entire now different conversation, because maybe a lot of you guys are now working from home and you're like, oh, I have all the time in the world to be able to cook and do all these different things. No, right? Like it doesn't really work that way all the time. So as an example, let's say you take one tray of chicken that you get from whatever, right? So what we did is we turn it into, any of you guys ever have a slow cooker or, you know, one of those machines? We literally turned the entire thing and we made just like basic chicken. So you take one tray of chicken and you made this, obviously this huge pan. Now from there, what we did is like, this is actually when you get a little bit more fun when it comes down to coming up with different ideas. From there, we actually took meal number 1. We turned it into tacos. So it was like Taco Tuesday. So we're like, okay, cool. So the only thing you need to add into this is your tortillas and vegetables. Courtney, what is the rule of 3?
Protein, veggies, carbs.
Yeah. So every single time that we actually sit down to eat a meal, I ask myself, okay, am I meeting my rule of 3? I call it that way. So a rule of 3 is going to be 3 main components that every single athlete, every single person should have. And we're not going to talk about advanced strategies, keto, all that kind of stuff, not yet. But usually that's the best way that I structure my meals, right? So I say, for example, okay, taco. So how do I get the rule of 3 in there? So I got the chicken that I already prepared. And I just need to make sure I have my grocery shopping list. This is how I build my list. I make sure I add those things in there. The vegetables, frozen vegetables, is the simplest thing to do it. And then obviously I add my chicken in there. Done. Meal number 1, done. How long did that take me? What, 5-10 minutes to put that together? Not too long. So then you're cutting out time and also you're saving money on there. Meal number 2, we took some crushed tomatoes and we turned it into like a chicken sauce, like chicken pasta sauce. And then we made some pasta. Meal number 2. Super simple, easy to do it. Yesterday, we actually took that chicken, which I still had from Sunday, and we turned it into like a salad bowl with rice. Super simple. Meal number 3. Number 4, we made a pizza out of that too, right? So on Sunday, we didn't spend more than an hour prepping something for the week. We usually get Instacart, we get the stuff delivered, we make a couple of meats, a couple options, and then from there, we come up with different ideas to make it fun. Because a lot of times you guys get tired, obviously you think about healthy foods and you think about just the same thing over and over again. And I told, like, I did a Facebook Live yesterday in a video, I said food should be something that you would enjoy. Like literally you're sitting down in your table and you need to be excited about the stuff you're about to eat. Because if you're not, you're probably doing it wrong and you're probably doing it in a way that is never going to be sustainable for you guys. So that's kind of like the first thing I wanted to kind of share from like the meal prepping standpoint. So stop doing like the extra super like hard work and then just start simply simplifying the process as best as you can. And we have a lot of resources, and I'm gonna at the end of this, like today's workshop, I'm actually gonna share a really cool thing that we have prepared for nutrition for Guavas now. So there's gonna be a lot more resources that are gonna come into place. Now, Matt actually asked me about portion controlling. Okay, there's many different ways that you can kind of establish portion controlling. And it all starts first with what your goals are. So number 1, you need to know, okay, what is my goal? What am I trying to do? Am I trying to, like, how many of you guys are in here just to improve body composition? You want to like reduce body fat, like improve your, increase muscle mass. How many of you guys here are just for pure performance? You want to like be the best CrossFit athlete there's ever been. Like you don't really worry, you feel like you're comfortable with your body composition. You're just trying, I'm one of them. I just want to make sure that I can train as best as I can. How many of you guys are here just purely for just health, to be healthy and to have, a good relationship with food and train and just be good, right? Some of you guys are in the same kind of like arena. So overall, it comes down to first the goal. And number 2, There's many different ways that you can establish portions. There's like hand sizes, which is really a good way to kind of do this. And there's also the weigh-in whenever we're doing, for example, macros and things like that. That's another really simple solution and simple way to do it. The best thing that you need to kind of start thinking about is how many meals are you going to have for the entire day? That's the first thing. Because some people actually ask me, Andres, is it true that I need to be having meals every 2 to 3 hours? The answer is no. It's actually what works best for you. So for me, I have like 3 massive meals in the day, and that works for me too. That's fine. Number one, what your goal is, how many meals you want to have throughout the day. Because if you, Matt, want to have like 6 small meals, your pieces of chicken are probably going to be a lot different than mine if I'm only having 3, right? Because number one, I always prioritize your protein intake. Protein is so important specifically for athletes because not only keeps you fuller, but at the same time it also ensures that you're building muscle and maintaining quality of muscle. So it's good for recovery. Quick thing here so you know how many grams of protein, because most people here are kind of like in the, we're gonna call you guys in like the healthy category. Like there's, unless like there's any kind of health conditions and stuff like that. But for most people, I typically say, okay, how much protein do you need to be having? It's as simple as like take your weight and multiply it by 1.0. Just to kind of like to ballpark it. So like if I weigh 170 pounds, I need about 170 grams of protein. From there, you can kind of start to establish how you can kind of establish your portion. So how much you weigh? Oh, there you go. So 175 grams of protein. So if you're gonna split that up into how many meals? So you need to be having 40 grams of protein with every single meal if you're having 4 meals. Does anybody know how many grams of protein is in 1 ounce of meat? 7 or 8. So if you were turning, let's say like the only thing you were having for protein sources is meat, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just hypothetically speaking, and you need to be having 40 or 160, I'm just say here 160 grams of protein daily. It's a simple solution in how you do it. So you take 40 grams divided by 7, so let's say 6. So if you were only eating meat as your source of protein, that means that every single meal you need to be having about 6 ounces of meat. And if you want to use your hands to figure that out, if you take the palm of your hand, that's about 3 ounces in a deck of card. So you need to having 2 times that. So you look at the chicken, if you're not really weighing things out, you look at your hand, you look at the chicken. Okay, does that look like a deck of cards? And does it take about the space of my palm of the hand? That's about 3 ounces. So I need to having 2 times that. And I need to have that because I need to have 6 ounces per meal. Again, this is granted that you're having only meat as your main source of protein, which is not the case. But just so you have an idea. That's how we develop portions, and you can kind of standardize them so you can keep it simple. So whenever you have like, let's say like back to the meal prep, you made this chicken, it's so much easier because you can always kind of establish the same sort of like servings for the whole week and you keep the consistency. People fail to see results in nutrition and training mainly because they lack the consistency. How many of you guys like feel like that's your problem? Like sometimes that you go an entire week and you're like, yes, I did good. And then the weekend comes in and you're like, like I messed up, and you feel guilty, and then you go back to restriction on the week, and like you go back into like diet starts Monday mentality, right? That's the problem. You're not always doing things wrong. You're just essentially not holding them consistently and sustainably, and a lot of times it's just because you don't have all the tools to be able to help you do that. So this is a good simple thing that you can kind of start to do. So from the number standpoint, that's how you develop portion control. The same thing applies with carbs or carbohydrate sources or fats and things like that. Like if you need to have like X amount of, you know, and we have like some really good resources I can send you guys as far as like, okay, like let's say rice is your main source of carbohydrate. And you need to be having like 200 grams of carbohydrates or 3. If you split that up and you know 1 cup of rice across the board, whether it's white, brown, whatever it is about 40 grams of carbs, so you can kind of establish just simple things the same way. And then you standardize the portions that you have in one of your meals. Now, when you go to a restaurant, then visually you can, if you know, remember like the whole thing with the hand, it's easy to be able to like discern like the differences between like when you're having 3 ounces, for example, Chipotle, if you ever go to Chipotle, it's 3 to 4 ounces. Those are standard portions. So it helps you understand whether you're getting enough protein or not. Going back to this, I also said that you're not only getting meat from as your main sources of protein. What are other sources of protein that we get on a daily basis? Dairy, so things like yogurt, milk, fish. So fish, all those things, and then everything is a byproduct of that. So eggs, whey protein powders, all those different things, those are all protein sources. So let's say, for example, you're not gonna have 6 ounces of chicken for breakfast. Some people may do that, but most of the people actually are not gonna do that. So then you sort of think about what other sources. For example, 1 egg has the same equivalent, 7 grams of protein, the same thing as meat. So it's a simple kind of like math that you can do in your head. So if I have 3 eggs, I'm having about 20 grams of protein, still half, so maybe I need to push on my protein a little bit more, or I need to change the portions the rest of my day to make sure that I'm getting enough. That's a simple way to do that. Now, if you're tracking macros and you're weighing food, that's a different ballgame because you can actually have more accuracy and you know exactly how much you'll be consuming on any single one of those meals. And there's a lot more things that can go into portion control. But a simple kind of like rule, if you think about, for example, a plate, for most people, if you actually kind of split this up into, I call it like there's a performance plate and there's like the more like body composition plate. Maybe Chandler knows about this stuff. So the way I look at it is you kind of split it up into 3. So if you fill your plate with a lot of vegetables and fruits on one side, you're going to be full because there's a lot of like fiber. So it's a really good way to do it. Like Courtney does that all the time. And then you say protein and then your carbs for the rest, fruits and veggies on the other one. If you're a person that is looking more for performance, what do you need more of? Carbs. So then actually we go to the peace sign plate. And the peace sign plate, it's something like this. So you have carbs, protein, fruits and vegetables. So it's a little bit more equivalent. Even something as simple as looking at your plate and evaluating how it looks like, it's just as simple to actually start putting things into that are going to be supportive of your goals. Like how many of you guys sometimes like, don't have any vegetables added into your plate, right? That happens all the time. So a lot of times when that doesn't happen, there's consequences to that. And they're not gonna be like consequences like you're not gonna have a great workout and all these different things. But for example, like when I don't have a ton of vegetables in my plate, I get hungrier a lot faster. So then you start to like nib on things and you start to grab snacks here and there, you know? So that obviously leads to sometimes overeating or eating more than what you need, or sometimes like not eating the right things. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right, so we got this crossed over the list. Post-workout nutrition, who asked that question? Okay. What do you think the first question I'm gonna ask is, what time do you train? But most people here train in the afternoon, right? Most of you guys, maybe some at 9:30. So it all depends on the timing. Here's like something that happens, I see a lot in CrossFitters and people that train. If you finish your workout and you chug a protein shake, let's say you did the 6:30 class, and you chug the protein shake, and you, like right after 7:30, and you go home, guess what's gonna happen? You're not gonna be as hungry. And then you're going to use a protein powder to replace a real source of food. So for post-workout, we're always being told like you need to have a protein shake. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, is that going to affect my ability to get a more wholesome meal when I get home? So then at the protein shake, I actually I take it out. And then I say I'm gonna have a full meal when I get home. The second question people ask, okay, what is like the types of foods that I need to be consuming right after? I like to call it the 3 R's of recovery, essentially. This is where to do it. So you need to make sure you're refueling, you're repairing, and you're rehydrating. So you need to ask yourself, am I getting the foods that are giving me that? So how do you refuel? It's like you went from point A to point B in a car and you use all the gas in the tank, right? So what is the first thing you need to do in order for you to be able to get that car to function again? You need to gas it up again. We need to add more gasoline into it. So the same thing applies to our bodies. So refuel, what do you refuel with? Do you refuel with protein? No, you refuel with carbs. So when you go home, you need to make sure that there's a source of carbs that you're adding. Coach, I thought that you should not be having carbs at night because, well, you're going to bed, right? Not necessarily. And I have been teaching all my clients that you can crush carbs. I crush a lot more carbs at night than I do in the morning, and because I train at night. So actually, I think it's the best time for you to be able to include those things. Repair. What do you repair muscle with? We talked about earlier. Protein. And what do you rehydrate with? Electrolytes. It's really hot out there. I think I posted on Facebook, the Guava group recently, that I posted these electrolytes, and I think somebody told me those are like magic because if somebody took them after they drank heavily and they felt really good the next morning. Dehydration is the #1 reason why your strength is affected. I used to work with a lot of kids in IMG Academy, and I remember there was a class I did with golfers. And I now started to play golf. Thank you very much. I'm like getting in there, So one of the exercises I did is I took a putter and I said, okay, and I took a kid and I said, come over here. And I said, okay, you need to make sure that you get the ball inside of that cup. So I put a cup in there. Here's the putter, and I tell him, like, do this. Something simple, very short distance, and I have him do that. I was like, okay, you made it, right? Then let me do something to you. And I spin the kid like 10 times. This was really mean. But I spin the kid 10 times, and he was like this. And I was like, go try to make the putt. And he's just like, okay. And he did it, of course. And I was like, okay, you know what the lesson is? That's actually the effect that dehydration can have on your cognitive abilities. 2% dehydration which is actually not a whole lot. Like that's literally, if you weigh 200 pounds, that's like maybe dropping a couple pounds or so, can represent a massive change in your ability to do a few things. Vertical jump is affected. How is that impact CrossFit? Box jumps, right? Your strength is actually diminished. Everything in here we do obviously requires some strength. Your ability to think cognitively, mental strength, all these different things that are affected with dehydration. So that is definitely something that you need to make sure that you're adding as part of your hydration kind of strategies. One thing that you can actually do, we actually use weight to know how much water you need to be consuming after. So for example, like if you wanted to give you a challenge, I always like practical things. Weigh yourself after you're done with your working out, or before your workout and after your workout. If you dropped 2 pounds in that workout because you did 2 and you sweated a lot, there's a lot of heavy sweaters out here, you're going to replenish for every single pound that you lose, how many? 16 ounces. 16 ounces of fluid for every pound that you're losing of fluids, or every pound that you're losing of your body weight. So if you drop 3 pounds, has anybody else ever done that before? Try it. You have? Simple, right? Especially with the heat. But then we replenish hydration not only with water, we need to make sure we're getting electrolytes because we're losing them through our sweat. How many of you guys here are cramped up in the past running, or like Murph, I started cramping up on my calves. Like it happens to a lot of people, and sometimes it could be related to the electrolyte imbalances. We need to make sure we replenish those to ensure that our body is operating properly. A good way to do it is, like, for example, we buy those like low calorie like Powerades or Gatorades. That's a good way right now during the summer. We don't usually buy them in the winter because there's not a massive need to be able to actually use that. Simple solution. Drip Drop is a really good like little powder that we use as well. So those are really good options too. So rehydration is a key. Protein and carbohydrates. And if you're gonna have a meal after your training session, that's a good post-workout recovery. Done. Now, if you're gonna have a long time, then that's when you can kind of have something. In fact, I actually recommend most people to have a simple carbohydrate at that point. What is a simple carb? The one that doesn't have a ton of fiber. And I usually tell people, if you want to have something, I call it fun, so more like a higher sugary type of item, the best time to really include it is going to be post-training, because your body is very insulin sensitive. That's a really fancy term to describe that your body's really good at utilizing and putting those carbohydrates in the right places to replenish what you lost. We're gonna leave fasting for the rest of it. We're gonna talk about who asked about macros. Macros for weight gain, right? Protein for somebody that is like, whether you're trying to lose body fat or you're trying to like gain muscle mass, doesn't really change much. What changes is usually the amount of overall calories you're consuming. So essentially, and this is like a challenge I usually tell a lot of my clients to do, is like track your food for a few days to figure out how many calories you're typically consuming. And then, but we're gonna teach you essentially how many calories you need for your goals that you need to establish. And you figure out, okay, what's the gap that I need to fill? The thing about it too with muscle gain, gaining muscle, think about it like you're trying to, it's a lot harder than dropping body fat. And it takes a long time. And as we age, as we get older, that ability to do so gets a lot more difficult. People really think that, for example, like just like you can drop 5 pounds of fat on like, let's say like 4 months, that you can gain 5 pounds of muscle in 5 months. Some people can, but some people can't. It's the reality of it. It really is harder, so it requires a lot of consistency. So it's not just necessarily eating more calories, but then being able to kind of sustain that and adjusting it accordingly. The question, I literally can spend an entire hour answering them because there's just so much that goes into it, but I'm gonna make sure that you have enough resources to know exactly how much you need. Burning fat and gaining muscle, is that possible? What do you think? At the same time. Body recomposition, yes you can, but it depends on your training history. For somebody that has been training for like years, like Coach Darian, like anybody here that have been training for a long time, doing both at the same time requires a lot of work, requires a lot of like detail in nutrition. And like, for example, I worked with a lot of NFL athletes. And one of the things with them is like they would put like to like this NFL combine program that was like preparing them for the biggest event of their career. But all they did was like train, sleep, and eat. And you can see the DEXA scans that we did on them, which is like this body composition assessments. And you can see how they gain a bunch of muscle and lost a ton of fat. So that's body recomposition. But to do that, it's difficult. But if you're just starting to train, you can take advantage of that. But then you have to make sure your nutrition is right on point for this. And a lot of times people think like, well, if I want to lose body fat, I need to like lower my calories. But it's like, how are you supposed to gain muscle then if you're restricting yourself too much? One thing that you can take away from also from this session here today is you need calories to fuel your body. I always talk to Corny about this because a lot of times like people have this mentality. It's like, okay, if body fat is the goal, I need to like restrict. For example, when I'm looking at sugar, like, do I want to have sugar in my coffee? Like, do I want to, that's the way that I want to like, you know, use like some of like the moderation that I can have on a daily basis. Me personally, I don't. So I prefer to use a sugar substitute like stevia or monk fruit extract or something like that. And I prefer to have a Pop-Tart later in the day. That's just the way I like it. Like, I love Pop-Tarts, Stevie knows. You know, so is there sugar in Pop-Tarts? Yes, there is. Am I worried about that? No, because what did I have for lunch? I have a great, nice vegetables, all those different things, totally fine. I teach all my clients that you can have the flexibility to include sugary foods and have those things into your diet as long as you do so in moderation. But a lot of times you need to ask yourself, why are you having all these cravings for sugar? A lot of times it's something deeper. If you've been restricting yourself so much, your body's going to automatically tell you, hey, like you're hungry. And your cravings that you have in your body are connected to your emotions. When is the last time that you craved broccoli, right? Broccoli is a carbohydrate. I can't think about it, right? But when is the last time that you craved chocolate or something? Last night, right? So your body has an insane ability to connect a physiological need, like what your body requires, to the emotional thing because it connects them together. Okay, we need energy right now. Oh, like remember the time that you had chocolate and you were so happy? Put them together. And those are cravings that are usually happening, but usually a craving, it comes as a result of an actual need your body has. You need to learn how to listen to that need and figure it out. Why am I having this craving for those specific things? And if you're like, you know, you have a pretty good diet and I really want to have a piece of chocolate, then have the damn piece of chocolate and that's totally fine. But moderation is key here. And I always like tell people like the food industry nowadays, like they make foods that are hyper palatable, which means they make it so easy for you to eat insane amounts of it. That's actually done on purpose. Why is it done on purpose? Because you buy more of it. Chips, that's a great example. Like let me give you an example. Like the corn chips, the tortilla chips from a Mexican restaurant. Like you can literally sit there and eat on insane amounts. But if I give you an ear of corn, how many ears of corn can you have in one setting? You'll probably feel full. It's the same thing. It literally comes from the same place. They just process it in a way that is hyper palatable. It melts in your mouth and it's so easy to digest that you can literally have insane amounts of. So if you change, what does paleo work? Because you're eliminating so much processed crap out of your diet and then you're actually going back to eating wholesome foods. So if 80%, but I don't like paleo because it's just restricted, but then if 80% of everything you eat comes from the ground, lean meats, whole grains, and stuff like that, and you leave that 20% to stuff like this and more fun foods, processed items, that's a perfect balance to have. And it's a balance that you can freaking sustain. Because if you can't sustain it, then what's the point of doing it in the first place? I had conversation all the time with the people who are going to join our programs, and I say, okay, you want to do this. Why do you want to do it? And do you see yourself doing this in a year? A year? No, I thought it was going to be a 3-month program. No, I'm asking if you want to do it for a year. No. Okay, then we're not doing that. What's the point, right? So many people go through like this cycle, right? We've all been through it. Cycle of diet after diet, things after like try this, try that. Oh, I heard this person is doing this. I know this person is doing that. Don't get lured into like fancy diets or fancy things that sound too good to be true. And just simply focus on that 80-20 rule is what we live by on a daily basis. People criticize me like, oh, you're pushing sugar. No, I'm not. I'm just simply making sure that you have a lifestyle that is sustainable for your performance, for your goals, for everything that you're doing daily. So typically, when you look at, say, a piece of chicken, it depends on the type of meat, but a lot of times, specifically red meats that have a lot more fat, when you cook it, you melt a lot of it and then it's lost in there. So the weight actually changes. I prefer to weigh when you're weighing foods or you're looking at them to kind of like portion control, to do it after they're cooked because they're already removed. They've already kind of gotten everything out of it that is going to go away. For example, like water. Like have you ever cooked like, for example, like turkey or ground meat? Like there's a lot of stuff that is left behind. So I prefer to kind of cook things because it doesn't lose protein. It just simply, it's like less weight. So it does have less protein, but just simply because it's like it's less of a like portion is just a little bit smaller. So try to do it when it's cooked, and that's ideal. I tell people, like, if your supplements, what does the word mean? Like, they're meant to supplement your diet. So supplements are just there just to make sure that you have like the filling the gaps in your nutrition. There are things for athletes that I do recommend when your diet is actually well. So when I evaluate your diet, it's like, you know what, looks pretty good. So then we figure out what kind of gaps that we need to fill. But the typical, because I know you want to know what supplements I have recommended to athletes, and I think Chandler would actually agree with me on this. Like, the typical things that I recommended for health are going to be things like fish oil. And the reason why I recommend it is because a lot of us don't get enough omega-3s. And the type of Western diet that we typically have here too, it's more omega-6s, which are going to be the more pro-inflammatory fats compared to like the anti-inflammatory fats, which are going to be the ones that are coming from healthy fats and like fish and stuff like this. So fish oil. A lot of us are vitamin D deficient. So I do recommend vitamin D supplementation, but I also recommend you get tested for it. Like, for example, I live in Florida. And I realized last year when I got tested that I was vitamin D deficient. I couldn't believe it. I get sun exposure, and a lot of times, like, people are just not really good at producing enough vitamin D from the sun. So that's another thing too, because it's involved in a million different things. Now, when we look into performance, the one thing that I always recommend, a lot of people say, like, okay, you want to increase strength and your diet is good. Creatine monohydrate is one of the most researched supplements since the 90s, and is being shown to be effective to increase strength, to improve strength. 5 grams before training, it's usually before or after training, it's all really that is required. And that's what I typically get. And you can get one from like bulk supplements because it's also a pretty relatively cheap supplement. So creatine monohydrate is something that I have recommended in the past for performance. And honestly, that's pretty much it. There are other things, but I usually have a ton of questions to ask you before I can say, you know what, you can take this or you can take that. But those are going to be the main ones. Some people ask me about pre-workouts. Pre-workouts, you have to be careful because of the amount of caffeine. And if you're taking, most of the people are coming here to late classes, and you're taking a pre-workout and wondering why you're struggling so much to get good quality sleep, it could be because of the fact that you're having 3 milligrams of caffeine at 6 p.m. And that's like 3 cups of coffee, just so you know. So kind of keep that in mind. So he's laughing because like, oh, that makes perfect sense now. Yeah. And now you know why, because you'll be taking a pre-workout before you train. So yeah, there are pre-workouts that I do recommend that have no stimulant. So they don't have any caffeine added into it, but they still have a lot of like the ingredients that good, Legion Athletics, it's a pretty good brand. And that's what I use for pre-workout. And they have a stimulant and a non-stimulant pre-workout as well. So magnesium is one of those minerals that it's a lot harder to get from food sources compared to like other minerals. And a lot of times people may have a lot of deficiencies. Magnesium, we call it a calming mineral. So it's a mineral that kind of helps you like bring you down and like kind of like, especially at nighttime, it's so important. And there may be people that are deficient. So sometimes like for people that struggle with sleep, I may have recommended, there's a lot of things that can affect sleep, but I have recommended in the past magnesium citrate or magnesium biglycinate. So those are like the ones that I recommend. And usually anywhere between 200 to 800 milligrams. That's obviously very personalized, but magnesium citrate, that is like a simple powder called Natural Vitality. It's called Calm. That's Natural Vitality is the brand. And it's like a little powder they put in hot water. And 1 teaspoon at nighttime is actually a pretty good thing to have, or you can actually bring it up to 2. Just be careful because magnesium can also be a natural take you to the bathroom very quickly. So magnesium citrate is pretty well absorbed. Magnesium bisglycinate, I think is what it's called. It actually has even better absorption when it comes down to it. And then there's benefits of magnesium for cognitive health, and that's a different type of, that magnesium is just not as simple as like, oh, just buy a magnesium from the store. There's so much. Magnesium L-threonate, it's actually a type of magnesium that kind of cross your blood-brain barrier, so you have more accessibility to magnesium in your brain. So that's actually more like there's so much stuff. You can tell like I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, so I like to learn about it. So, but yeah, magnesium is something that I would encourage and I would recommend. B12, yeah. So B12 is unless you're a vegan, B12 is not something you need to be supplemented. There's a lot of people that do shots of B12 and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that that's recommended as long as you're getting enough meat into your day. If you're vegan, you may want to supplement with B12. So I want to tell you guys some super cool like news that we have for you guys for like, from the Guava. So we've been meeting for the past couple of weeks, trying to figure out how we can support you, how we can help you even more than just like doing these workshops. So we created something called Guava Nutrition Club, which is going to be a good opportunity. It's going to be like a membership only kind of group that is essentially going to help you have access. It's not going to be one-on-one coaching like I do with a lot of my clients. That's still something that I do. And if you're interested, I'd love to have a conversation about it. But Guava Nutrition Club is going to be sort of like a monthly membership type of thing in which you're going to have access to not only like a group call with me or one of the dietitians in my team, but you're also going to have the ability to have access to like a member portal where you're going to have like access to recipes, to like trainings, to all these different things that are going to be super helpful to you. And then we're going to have this group calls like going to be kind of like Q&As and some sort of like, I call them like office hours time. So you can kind of ask all the questions that you have. We're going to teach you how to calculate your macros, doing all these different things. Again, it's not a one-on-one treatment, but it's going to be sort of like a group type of session. And this is actually something that we're starting at. It's going to be $240 like for a 6-month program. So you can literally get that out of the way, or you can actually pay $60 a month extra on top of your membership. And if in case you want to do a month-to-month type of commitment, and you can also do that. If you're interested in that, we're going to be sending out some communications about it this week as far as how you can join, how you can be a part of it. And we would love to have you there because I think it's going to be a cool opportunity because we're going to do some meetings either virtually or you may do it in person. There's going to be a pretty cool like tight group of individuals trying to kind of improve your nutrition, improve your health. And it's going to be a good step down program from obviously my one-on-one coaching, which is a higher kind of like investment to work with me or somebody in my team. And I think it's going to be a good opportunity for you guys to learn as much and get as much information. And if you feel that that's not enough, then we can talk later as far as how we can do about coaching. We're going to send out a lot more information to our email list as far as how you can join. It's literally going to be something part of like Waterify. So it's going to be part of your membership. You just need to have an add-on into it. And I think it's going to be a good opportunity for you guys to get a ton of stuff. So stay tuned because definitely we want to like get you guys involved and get you guys ready to jump on it. And I think it's going to be cool. All right, guys. So thank you so much for coming. I'll see you guys in the next one. Talk to you soon.